Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm super excited. It's the end of 2021. We're jumping into 2022. Everyone is going to be focusing on losses, losing weight, figuring it out, whatever. On this podcast, in this conversation, I want to focus on gains, gaining balance, gaining perspective. I am going to bring in fitness fam, health and wellness, OG, and hailing from Denver Sports Recovery. They were one of my first clients when I first started KO Alliance. So we have deep family rooted history here. I'm going to introduce Steve. I'm actually going to give the full bio because his whole bio is so apropos for our whole conversation today. I want to go the full length, and then I'm going to let him kind of introduce himself. And we're going to just talk about health and wellness, the balance of the mental and the physical, and how we can really jump into 2022 in really positive, good, healthy, excited space. So without further ado, Steve, welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Thank you so much for having me. I will admit right off the bat, this is my first podcast recording, so hopefully I don't mess up too many times. But no, again, I'm super grateful to be on here and gracious for you to have me on. Like you said, deep family roots, and I love talking all things health and wellness. So hopefully we can give the crowd some gems and pearls of wisdom today.
I have full faith, and I love my first time casters. It's gonna be awesome. Here is your full bio, and usually I don't do the full bio, but again, I think it really explains your background, and then we'll jump right in. But Steve is a native Eastern Pennsylvanian. He earned his undergraduate degree in athletic training from the University of Pittsburgh. After completing an internship with the Pittsburgh Pirates, his passion for sports and sports medicine only grew deeper. His love for the outdoors, stemming from his participation in the Boy Scouts, led him across the country to explore, hike, and continue his education at the University of Oregon. There, he earned a master's degree in human psychology. We're here. Remember, this is. I'm the best reader. This is why we're strong. Physiology, while serving the Ducks football program. Steve's diverse work experience has included collegiate athletics at Gonzaga University, professional athletics with the NBA Developmental Academy, and amateur athletics as a personal trainer. Steve likes to combine skills from both his ATC and CS credentials because he truly believes that movement is medicine. When he's not nerding out on work, you can find Steve reading a good book, cooking a tasty meal, or watching stand-up comedy. So Steve, I love that you've done the professional, the collegiate, the amateur. You're a cook. You're here for comedy. Like, we're covering all the bases. But to give us a little bit, I always love to hear the human behind the mission first. So give us a little information about young Steve before we get all the intentional decisions as we grow up.
Okay, young. Just young, I promise.
There you go.
At least I still feel I try to stay as young as possible all the time. Young Steve, yeah, I grew up in Philly. I was a city slicker through and through growing up, playing basketball at the local park as much as I could, and grew up an Eagles fan, Phillies fan, Flyers, Sixers, all the Philly sports. It was kind of funny. So I'm first generation. Both my parents were born and raised in Cairo, Egypt. And when they immigrated in like the 70s or 80s, before they had us, I think they really tried to assimilate to that American lifestyle. So I grew up with nothing but sports and American culture. And that kind of just propelled me into wrestling and playing football all throughout my childhood. And kind of and it's a long story I won't get into, but kind of how I fell into sports medicine was mixing the two things I loved the most. I was a math science geek growing up in school. I was the nerd on the football team and on the wrestling team. So when I got to college, this thing called sports medicine, I was like, wait a second, I love sports and I'm a nerd. So you're telling me I can mix the two and make a career out of it? And that's kind of long story short. Everyone in my family wanted me to be a doctor. I was like, I can't do that. But I can get pretty close and maybe affect even more lives with what we're doing here.
Yes. I didn't even know that you were Egyptian. Do you know Hoda Kotb, right? One of my favorite humans ever.
Is that the yeah.
On the Today Show.
Yeah, I was gonna say Good Morning America, but I knew that was wrong. Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, I feel like she's like one of the biggest brand ambassadors for Egypt. But her family story and everything was super incredible. So I didn't even know that, but that's amazing. Were your parents athletic or anything growing up, or was that like in your blood in general?
Nope, absolutely not. We grew up watching soccer on TV in different languages, but no, I think I have two older brothers and a little sister, And I think it just started from the oldest sibling, and the rest of us kind of fell into that sports gene. As long as we got our schoolwork done, don't get it twisted. We're still very
Yes.
much children of immigrants who put school first, but making sports a priority, I think, was good for us developmentally.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you had a turmeric and tequila balance kind of early on of combining these worlds that seem mutually exclusive, but in reality, they really do fit so well together. And first of all, I couldn't agree more that you are very much a doctor. What you guys do in any of these, if anyone's not familiar with like recovery centers, I know it sounds like an alcohol thing. It's not at all. It's where you can go if you're training, and it's really leaned into the mental now, but mostly physical, like chiropractic work, stem, cupping, PT, like anything around kind of like physical recovery. And I know you guys even branched into like some of the neurosciences around things, but we'll save that for another podcast. But it's really about addressing some physical issues before you even have to get to like some of the surgical routes or recovering from surgery. They're really high-end, trend setting, awesome things you can do for your body that in turn impact your mind, that I can actually, I would say you guys save us from maybe going to the doctors. In addition, you guys are part-time therapists, because I've spent hours in there coming off training, and you guys kind of see us at our worst. Like, we're tired, we're hungry, we're crabby, we could be injured. And you guys have to not only take care of our bodies, but you usually get an earful of what's going on or have to just pick up our post-workout vibes. So you are very much doctors in my mind.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, that's exactly right. I think what I try to tell people when I first meet them is before you have to come to us in a reactive manner, try to be proactive and get in and use the recovery as a proactive solution to hopefully avoid some sort of surgery, or having to go see an MD or a DO in the long run. I think trying, and I know that's kind of been this health trend that we, even at the governmental level, we're trying to move towards like what they would call preventative care. I just call it being proactive.
Yes.
If you be proactive before you're reactive in your health, I think that's going to be good. One of the coolest things I read recently actually was make your food your medicine before your medicine becomes your food.
Yes.
And it just made me think a lot. I think it goes along with the health benefits of both turmeric and tequila. I think they're equally healthy, so and equally needed.
Well, exactly. The thing is, the true truth, the balance is there's no ever real complete balance. Like, you have to, I'm ironically a Libra as well, so the scales are my sign, and they're never totally even, but just kind of juggling it and keeping it as even as possible is the key. But that proactive approach, I've learned this the hard way, being an athlete and through fitness, is if you overtrain, like you think you're doing more is more, then you're injured and you're tired. If you overeat or don't eat enough, then you can't be productive in the gym or even proactive about your recovery. Like, there's so many things that like you have to just kind of see what really actually works for you. And I think this is a growing, like you just said, conversation as society evolves and we get pressure because, food is, we're understanding the effects of it. The insurance is so outrageously expensive. We're starting to be forced to be proactive about these things and really understand how a balanced approach, and maybe not making massive changes, but making small changes and figuring out what works for you is really the key. In your experience, having this incredible amount of experience in, the amateur, collegiate, and professional space, and working with all different level athletes and humans, have you seen that mental conversation continue to rise as you're working alongside the physical situation?
For sure. Mind, body, mind, all the time. I do appreciate the work, specifically the NBA, but I think across all 4 or 5 major sport leagues that are at least have a foothold in the U.S. I think all 5 of them are doing really well at trying to make mental health a priority, and they're talking about it. I'm blanking on the guy's name who really kind of opened it up, who used to play for the Cavaliers. Kevin Love did a really good job, came out with a piece probably a handful of years ago. And I think it's just kind of snowballed from there, which has been really, really good. There's so many things I want to say, but yeah, like long answer short, absolutely mind, body, mind. There's a term I learned taking a psychology class in college that's escaping me now, but something to like effect of like the horizontal effect. As soon as somebody's laying horizontally on a bed, they're more, they feel more vulnerable. They're more willing to share. And we get that all the time. I am by no means a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Definitely went to school for physiology. But everything we do here, there's some sort of mental component. And I think that was kind of what one of my first experiences in school was when I was working at Pitt with the football team. One of my mentors joked around. He said, just remember, if you're gonna be in this career for the next 20, 30 years, you got to always remember your best day. And by that, he meant kind of your busiest day. Not necessarily, we weren't celebrating injuries, but your best day, or when you're called upon, is always, always, always going to be somebody's worst day. You're never being called upon because someone scored a touchdown. And I use football just because that's like where most of my experience has been. You're going to run onto the field when someone has, a heartbreaking, their season-ending injury, right? You're going to be out there when there's questions to be asked, right? So just always remember that your worst day is going to be, or your best is going to be someone else's worst day. And that's going to help so much with the psychology. I mean, there's so much research happening with, somatic and mind-body connection with chronic pain coming out that it is real. And you alluded to it. We're doing a little bit here and with our partners down the street to try to figure out what the key is to cracking that code and getting people out of pain. But sometimes, like, talking about physical pain can actually make the physical pain go away. And it's just amazing what we've been able to see over the years.
Yes. And as you said, it's such a larger conversation. I just love how it is becoming more and more mainstream. And I know when you guys had neuroperformance, which is like neurofeedback and like brain studies and kind of literally connecting your brain with your body and unpacking that, the conversation started at like, how do we get better at catching the ball and like hand-eye coordination to like, wait, now this can be used for ADHD or more mental conversations. And I mean, it's just such a huge thing. Or even as simply as like acknowledging pain, talking about it, and watching your mind body connect, and like how that can not only solve it, but you can understand maybe it's causing it. I've so had to learn the hard way when like stress, thankfully my work has kind of drugged me through things that I don't think I would have been exposed to otherwise, like blood testing and understanding that, my liver is popping up and it's probably because I'm angry. Like I'm in a situation where something's going on and I've had to spend a lot of time and money figuring this out, to like, your body is usually showing you something. But something I really do want to touch on this conversation too, mainstream, even if you're not a health or wellness human, professional, athlete, competitor, the idea of being aware of your body and understanding that maybe it's not that you're overtraining, maybe it is an emotional response, that something is, your liver's flaring or your headaches are happening, but it's something else that's going on. Maybe it's not even pain from an injury. Have you had or done, I don't know if you're intuitive or big into energies or Reiki or anything like that, but have you brought some of that mental conversation into your practice for physical conversations?
All the time. I got to start taking notes because I got so many things I want to chat with you about. Long answer short, absolutely. I just remember there's one patient I had, honestly, not too long ago, and I can come up with a million examples, but the most recent one was someone came in with hip pain, and we were talking about his kind of journey through his hip pain and how many therapists and providers and chiropractors and physicians that this gentleman had been to. And I was like, can you imagine your life without hip pain? And without hesitation, he said no. And I was like, do you want to imagine your life without hip pain? And long story short, through about like 10 or 15 minutes of talking to him, hip pain was kind of like a conversation starter for him almost. And like, it's almost how he identified himself, right? Like identify ourselves through race, through ethnicity, through gender, sexual orientation. There's so many ways we identify ourselves now. I think pain is becoming something that people are recognizing as an identifying factor, for good or bad, who knows, right? But I think our first 45-minute session was literally just us talking. And he came in the next day. I didn't touch him. We didn't prescribe a single exercise. All we did was write out a roadmap. We wrote out some goals, and he came in the next day. He's like, hey, I noticed my hip hasn't been hurting as much lately. And that was the first step. Yeah. And to your point, I think we can touch on this probably more, throughout the entire conversation, but everyone talks about losing weight for the new year, right? Or I want to cut this out. I want to cut that out. Obviously, based on the name of your podcast, we're not cutting out any sort of good drinks, I hope.
Balance.
I think I used to do, I'm by no means a registered dietitian, but I used to do a little bit of like nutrition consulting for friends and family and people who just wanted to pick my brain. And one thing I picked up in giving nutritional advice was, because everyone would be like, and they would come in right off the bat, you're going to tell me to give up ice cream and cookies? I know. Or you're going to tell me to give up sugar or alcohol? I know. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You came to me. I'm not going to tell you to give up anything. I actually do the exact opposite. Let's add something in, because 9 times out of 10, if you're going to be eating a lot of sugar and candy, there's only so much room, right? There's only so much room on your plate. There's only so much room in your stomach. What if we just added a vegetable? And by doing that, we're not taking things away that people have, like, identified with over the years, things that people love. We're just adding in. And naturally, what people found over the course of days to weeks to months is actually that, like, carrot wasn't so bad. Let's add in 2. Let's add in 3. And then you start to see this thing where it's like the carrots are not, carrots are a dumb example. I don't love carrots, but carrots are going to start pushing the cookies off the plate naturally. And you never feel like you ever gave anything up. All you did was add something in. I do the same thing with rehab, right? People come in, this morning, someone was like, chronic back pain. I feel for the guy. I'm empathetic, I'm sympathetic. And he's like, all right, do I have to stop going to the gym? And I was like, no. Please, like, go to the gym more. Like, please keep working out. Just add in these 4 exercises. Add in these, 3 stretches and see what happens. And 9 times out of 10, just adding in a different warm up or a corrective exercise, you never have to take anything away. And I think that's the beauty of it. And that's why I love the way you introduced this. Is like, let's stop talking about things we have to lose and give up, and start talking about things that are gonna fill us up. Because every day we empty our bucket, right? We wake up every morning with a full bucket, whether that's water, sand, rice, whatever parable or philosopher you want to follow, and we have 24 hours to empty it. Well, I just try to, everything we do here is just trying to fill someone's bucket back up so they have more to go around.
So well said. It's, and again, I'm very much a human that has to learn the hard way. And I'm more of like a creative artist. And so structure is kind of like my kryptonite. I'm here for it a little bit, but I kind of, especially as you get older, you kind of figure out your own systems. But gaining that perspective, you can actually lose weight, and you can just shift the way your mindset works around something. And I love the idea and the basis of adding in versus taking away, because again, you're kind of like alleviating that resistance right away. And it's not just what you're consuming. Like, if you really know your body, like cortisol levels can go up, that can cause you to gain weight, and then stress levels. And it is such a larger conversation, but simplifying it, if we can just shift our perspective on things and maybe just look at it a little bit different and kind of alleviate the resistance in general, more mentally than physically, usually I think then we can grasp on to some sort of change, evolution, idea, thought, learning, and realize that maybe it's not that bad. And in fact, you might actually like it. We might embrace this. This might move us in the right direction without us thinking we have to do that because it's what we're supposed to do. I feel like American culture is catching up in that. Like, you look at deep philosophy, like I always talk about OG philosophy, kind of to live is to suffer, but you have to unpack your emotions and figure out the balance. Deep Asian cultures, teas and needling and all these things. And it's very like mindfulness. America is late to the game on some of this. Well, I don't know Egyptian culture really at all. Was this in your household by chance? Like, was this in your blood or mindset early on?
Not a ton. I don't think culturally, I would say, I don't know if my parents would agree with this. I would say from what I've seen, at least with my generation of Egyptians, we're very much like a work hard, play hard type of people. It's fitting for what I do specifically for a living, but I think Far East culture, even throughout some of Europe, my brother lived in Spain for a while, and he loved most of Spain is on 4-day work weeks. Yeah. They don't in their week, they don't sacrifice anything, they just work 4, take 3 off. And every day around 1 p.m. they have a siesta, and the entire town, he was living in a town right outside of Madrid, and that entire town shut down. I think Far East cultures throughout Asia are all about like just reflecting, right? Like not necessarily taking a nap in the middle of the day, but maybe starting your day a little later. Not so you have to, because I think so much, and this is just my personal opinion, but so take it with a grain of salt, but so many things that I'm reading lately are like, wake up 15 minutes earlier so you can meditate, or so you can journal, or so you can read a book. And my two really good friends who both lived in Japan for a while said that their training and everything that they were doing started later in the day. It started at 11 a.m., 10 a.m. versus like 6 or 7 is what we're used to. because their coaches wanted them to continue to meditate and take that time to journal things. But as soon as you tell someone that they have to, and it goes back to taking something away, right? You take away somebody's sleep, all of a sudden it becomes a chore, right? They have to wake up earlier in order to meditate. That's not going to be relaxing at all. I think these Eastern cultures see that, your body intuitively knows what it needs. Let it wake up when it needs to. Let it, and I'm not telling people to sleep until noon. That's not what I'm saying. But, instead of these things that we're trying to add in, like vegetables and time in the morning and recovery and trying to be proactive, instead of viewing it as a chore where you have to give something else up, add it in as something that you get to do versus, I use that term a lot, right? Like, this is something that you get to do, not something that you have to do. And it's easy at DSR. I can be like, you get to go sit in a hot tub. Like, it's a pretty easy set. Like, the cold tub is a little different, but
I was going to say, how do you PR that one? Yeah.
I just say you're going to feel better after, I guess. No, I think there's been some trends that have made cold therapy a lot easier of a pill for people to swallow. And I've started doing it myself, honestly, 3 or 4 times a week, just 10 minutes in the cold tub. And, I've noticed my own self feeling so much better. So, and I think it was a mindset thing for me, right? I get to work in this place. I'm here every day. I get to do that. It's not something that I have to do. And I think that's really helped flip the paradigm for me.
Excellent pro tip. Self-talk is everything, because what we're saying is what we're processing in our brains, and there's all these deep human optimization performance things you can do and diets and stuff. But truthfully, if you're just civilian human that's not super in health and wellness and fitness, like, super simple thing we all need to do is be conscious of our self-talk. And it sounds a little cliche at this point, but I think that's just such an amazing step one of really acknowledging how we're talking to ourselves, how we're processing our diets, our food, the cold tub. I'm so here for Wim Hof and all the things around cold water studies. I think it started at DSR, but shout out to Marsha. I have an above ground pool that I literally leave in my yard all year round. It's so obnoxiously unacceptable probably for the rest of my neighbors. It's a nice one, but still it's the most. But I try and get in it all year, and I have a hot tub, so I do hot tub, cold tub, and I look like a total weirdo. But I'm with you. I so believe that it works, and the more I did it, and the more I was like, this works so much. It's miserable every time, but I know how beneficial it is, so I don't resist. I just get in. You don't think about it, and my mind has become okay with it. And it wasn't conscious, but if you can kind of take that skill set, like you're saying, and apply it to other things, it really does work. I'm curious, when, with all the training and everything, when did this sort of like mental conversation enter into your practice? Because this is still kind of, trendy and cutting edge, and it's still kind of new.
Yeah. Do you mean for me personally, or for DSR?
Like, when did it sort of trickle into your world, or you're like, we really got to unpack the mental, or so when did it naturally come up in your, professional conversations, maybe even unknowingly?
So professionally, I think the conversations have happened a lot more frequently after certain pro athletes have spoken out. So I think that has made it a lot easier. And I think just in the honestly, moving to Denver, I noticed, I moved to Denver a little over 2 years ago, and I was living in Eastern Washington. I was working at Gonzaga right before here. And yeah, culturally polar opposites is what it felt like sometimes. And, I loved Spokane. I loved living there, but I lived in Eugene 2 years before that, and I felt like Denver and Eugene were a bit more similar in that people were more willing to talk. So I think professionally, it's twofold. One is where you're located, but two, I think again, celebrities have come out. I'm not a huge pop culture person. I probably can't, the star cast of any movie ever. But I do appreciate people using their platform, and I think celebrities and pro athletes have done that. For me personally, I had a mentor, and he'll probably never listen to this, but maybe I'll text him after and tell him. But his name is Rob Blank. He's in the NATA, the National Athletic Training Hall of Fame, and I'll never forget. I was kind of having a rough day, and I don't know if I should tell a story about the athlete who was also having a rough day, but basically, after all was said and done, Rob. Okay, so here's the story. This linebacker comes in, who's actually currently in the NFL right now. He plays for a team that'll probably make the playoffs. He walks in and he just sits down and he just starts crying. Just like, this 250 pounds, 6'6", giant human being who is an All-American linebacker at a D1 university just starts crying. And I happened to be sitting in the room. Rob's sitting at his desk. There's a very therapeutic looking couch in the office, and I went to go get up to leave the room because I was like, okay, obviously he's not here to talk to the intern. He's here to talk to Rob, the head honcho. And Rob goes, no, Steve, close the door and stay. And looking back, I know exactly what he was doing. It was a teaching moment for me. But this kid, he was in his 5th year of school. He was a father of a young child, just going through it. Finals were coming up. He was looking to get drafted, but was kind of on the cusp. Ended up getting drafted late, I think like 4th or 5th round. But just started balling. And 45 minutes later, long story short, Rob dropped some words of wisdom. The young athlete left the room, not in tears anymore. And Rob just looked at me and was like, everyone's going through something. And I think that's another kind of cliche thing that we've heard be thrown around. But he was like, everyone's going through something. An hour later, we're on the field, and this kid is laying out running backs like it's his job, right? Like he is the most macho man on the field. But I think that was the turning point for me. And I'm lucky that it happened really young in my career. But seeing this person who's supposed to, right? And like, if you're not watching this, the word supposed to be, right, in air quotes, he's supposed to be this leader, this tough leader who is supposed to have it all figured out at that level of athleticism and sport. And he didn't. And he actually said the athletic training room, I don't know, Kev, if you played college sports, but college athletes love the athletic training room. And he, after that conversation, he was like, this place is like the embassy. It's always safe in here to kind of do whatever you need, right? You got to watch your mouth in the coach's offices, and the locker room. You never know who's around, but the athletic training room was, at least at that place, it felt like a very, very safe space. And everyone's going through something, and from then on, it didn't matter, how big the offensive lineman was or how little the running back was that I was working with. There was always a chance that they had something going on off or on the field, and that was a huge factor in considering when you were even evaluating physical injuries, right? Somebody walks in at 6:30 in the morning, we got practice in an hour, and all of a sudden their back hurts. Well, they have no history of back pain. It was our job as the athletic training staff to kind of figure out, does their back hurt or are they just not up to it today? And I think coaches around the country at every level in every sport. I mean, we saw Simone Biles last year in the Olympics. Like, I think coaches are becoming more okay with players taking the day off, even if they're not. It used to be like, oh, if you can walk, you can practice, right? I had coach say that as recently as 2016. If you walked in here, you're running practice today. And I think it's becoming more and more acceptable to take that day, especially if you want them to play on, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is during the week. It might be worth that. And I think sports science, coaches are hard to deal with because they need tangible things. And so I think sports science is helping that with recovery days and things like that. And they're helping us too. I think a lot of scientists coming out showing, like we were talking about Wim Hof, hot tub, cold tub, adding in, again, not taking away, but adding in a little bit of recovery, adding in Normatex, adding in stim, adding in cryo. Now, you might not see the benefits later because you're not going to increase your performance. We're all performance driven, right? You might not increase your performance if you're just kind of a weekend warrior who likes to go on runs. But I always kind of remind people, what about that injury that you didn't know was going to happen, right? That you may have avoided. It's the little victories when it comes to kind of doing, self-care and self-talk and recovery that you don't necessarily see day to day, but that you kind of have to trust are there.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, because I think that really hit it home, and how beautiful for your mentor to be so aware and recognize that teaching moment. So KO Alliance, we specialize in strategic partnerships, sponsorships, but a lot about is brand ambassadors and influencers. And that word is like a bad word at this point because it's just gotten so much connotation. But the point is, and what we do is we create mutually beneficial relationships for the long term, because I recognize how powerful you influencers, that could be your mentor, your teacher, your father, someone at DSR, someone just that you passing in the street, how these little moments can entirely shift your trajectory. And it's in our responsibility as professionals, as as leaders, as coaches, as parents, whatever, to recognize our responsibility within that and how our actions can, I think it's a lot of times associated with something negative, but really positively change somebody's life. So your mentor in that point is this is why I get so excited about influencers and like us kind of turning this corner of like recognizing the powers of how influencers can be positive, change your trajectory and really put you miles and years ahead within the mental conversation. Even if it wasn't fully digestible at the time, you saw that power shift and how big of a deal it is to recognize a human being as a human. And I even have this conversation with businesses, like your employees, these are human beings. Like we have to like humanize the brand and understand what it is. And I don't want it to sound all businessy, but in that moment, did you feel like this intense sense of power or responsibility, or was there like an internal shift in you, like understanding how bigger of a conversation what you do now is?
I think so, yeah. Maybe not in the moment when the athlete was in the room, but
Sure.
you know what's funny? As you were talking, I was thinking, if Rob does ever listen to this, or if I go back and tell him the story, he'll have no recollection of that day.
Sure.
Which is kind of the cool. You're kind of you alluding or using the phrase "everyday leader." That's kind of what that is. Like the beauty of it is that he just did what he knew was right for my own professional and even personal development, and he probably has no recollection of it. I don't think in the moment, just listening to that athlete speak, I don't think nothing changed for me there, but definitely the conversation him and I had afterwards. I mean, I was young, I was like 18 at the time.
Sure.
I think the conversation I had afterwards, it allowed me to realize the gravity of the situation, and then seeing how the rest of that day played out, right? Like me and that athlete made eye contact about 10 times that day at practice, because he knew that I knew that he knew I was the only one that was in the room, other than Rob, and it built this special bond. And we never talked about it after that day. But I just noticed in passing, there was like the hello was a little bit more authentic, right? Like the thanks for the random ankle tape that may have happened, or the random ice bag, or the random stretch that may have happened, was a little bit, is just they build that bond. And that is the kind of cool part about working in that traditional college or professional setting, that I was actually scared I was going to lose when I came to kind of what I call the private sector, where we serve the general population. You see the same faces every single day when you work for a college professional team. I was scared I was going to lose that, but actually it's here more than ever at DSR with that kind of recovery center. It's set up just like an athletic training room for a pro team. Here, people, and I always describe DSR as two sides of the same coin. On one side, we have kind of our appointment-based services. That's chiropractics, massage, acupuncture, dry needling. There's about 20 different appointments you can cupping, scraping, everything you were talking about, cryo, that you can schedule. But on the other end of it, we have this kind of membership-based facility that people can, get a monthly membership to and use the infrared sauna, the hot tub, the cold tub, the Normatex on a walk-in basis, just like you would a gym or just like a pro athlete would in an athletic training room. And like I said, I was kind of scared I was going to lose that camaraderie. But, we have a few hundred members here. We probably have about 100 who are like super, super regular. And, I was just outside talking right before we, started this podcast recording. Was just talking to someone about, what him and his fiance were doing. Well, now he proposed to his fiance yesterday on her birthday. Like they did this huge thing. And, I know just as much about his life that I would have known about like any athlete life that, that I was working with. So we didn't lose the camaraderie. It's actually stronger here, I think, because we see the same faces every day. The biggest difference is people come to DSR because they want to, right? It's a choice. And you please make it businessy if you want, because I think there's a lot of overlap. This is a business, right?
Right.
Athletes that I was working with in the kind of quote unquote traditional setting, college and professional sports, they're there because they might be getting paid or on scholarship, but they're coming to the athletic training staff, the coaching staff, the strength and conditioning staff, because that's it, right? They have to, right? They play on Team X, they have to go see the staff of Team X. Here, we're one of many centers that have a lot of these types of modalities. We're probably the most comprehensive, I would say, in the modalities we have to offer, but it's still a choice. And the fact that people keep coming back and our regular members here is something pretty special, and it's fun to watch develop and grow and help, at least as much as I can, help in that process.
Amen. What you so eloquently kind of displayed is, we're here to talk about consciously gaining in 2022 and finding that balance, showing up as the ambassador, the influencer, the coach, the leader, maybe the business owner, or maybe you're on the other side as the athlete, the employee, what have you, but to recognize that reciprocity happens on both sides. You're there, you can provide service, what have you, but then you're amongst your fellow employees, or, what I really call my mission-driven humans. And something I'm personally focusing on for my business in 2022 is creating these cultures and getting these mission-driven humans together, because regardless what side you're on, when you show up to work and you're fulfilled and you're amongst humans that understand you, that want to be there, that want to, get better, do more, and it doesn't have to be like it's something about sports and like competitive or whatever. It could be about church or, a stay-at-home mom and you're with your mom's group, but like there's this like-mindedness and this mutually beneficial energy and like respect and like human connection that happens that I think does get overlooked in business a lot. Like you show up, you work, it doesn't matter. But when you're showing, you want to be there and you feel purposeful and the culture breeds that, it changes the energy of the entire situation, business, team, whatever. And I think that's just really such a conscious situation. Long-winded point. I just think it's so magical that because you do have that, 15, 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes to be with someone and work on their body physically, or even have a conversation, it's amazing. But that, chunk of time might be more of a human connection that they've had the entire day, just a concentrated conversation with no cell phone, no nothing. We're just totally focused on speaking. What you guys get to do is pretty magical, that it's the physical and the healing and all the expertise you bring to the table. And you get to have this really conscious conversation with multiple people throughout the day. And I think that actually, and the positivity that puts in people's lives in addition to yours, really, as cliche as it sounds, kind of moves our society in the right direction to slow us down, to pause, to understand. And we can't make these big leaps and bounds fast. But in these moments where we're connecting, I really believe that's the difference.
Yeah. Can I just say yes?
Yes. My very long-winded points. I love in the medical field, and especially at DSR, you get to have these moments of conversations where it pauses you, and the vulnerability as an athlete, or, even as a business owner or an employee that bleeds their business, you're so vulnerable in it. And the love of the game is such an emotional relationship. So when something like that gets taken away, you lose your job, or especially when it's your health, you are in such a vulnerable space that there's so much there more to manage than the physical attributes, and picking up and putting those mental pieces together is just such a great, it's a great thing to acknowledge, because I think it will streamline that process to true recovery. And like you said, in having that cup full. So I hope anyone listening, as they enter into the new year, they can really kind of pull back in any situation, maybe understand what's going on, the why, and maybe put pieces back together in a different way than they normally thought. Have you had people come in to see you where it was one thing and then actually it was something completely different, and you kind of had to like navigate their perspective to like address something totally different?
Every day. Every day. Every day. So I'll try to hit on everything that you were just saying. I just had to process a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar. I've read Brene Brown's work on vulnerability. Like, you're using the word vulnerability, and she always talks about stepping into the arena and daring greatly and things like that, which is kind of
in the arena is the best. Yes.
Yeah, and I kind of want to know if Tom Brady like stole from Brene Brown a little bit.
Well, all of them. I mean, it's all kind of, if you haven't read Man in the Arena, Theodore Roosevelt, you need to. I don't want to interrupt you here, but yes, all of it's kind of the same. But if you go read the original writings, it's basically like it's better to have like lost and failed and known that you've never been those that have never done anything. And basically it's okay to get your ass kicked, because now you're alive and it's worth it. And that's what it's about. But I don't want to interrupt you.
That makes sense. No, that makes me feel better that Tom Brady didn't steal it from her. Because that even reminded me, I think there's like a quote in Men in Black where Will Smith taught, what's the other guy's name? The other Men in
Tom,
I don't know.
Oh my God, not Tom Jones. But, oh my God, this is when I need people to call in. But just as you said, you're not into pop culture, you're nailing it right now.
No, I'm trying to pull out all the stops as I can. But no, better to have tried something and failed, right, than never to try it. There's a million quotes and cliche things that we can say about that. But I think vulnerability is a really interesting word, because I think, and I was actually talking to someone the other day. Isn't it interesting how, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, New Year's, whatever religion, whatever ethnicity you are, it's always interesting that all of these holidays fall within 6 weeks. Like,
Absolutely.
could we not spread it out a little? Like, it would be better for my digestive system. I wouldn't be having so much sugar and candy. Like, it would be better for everything, in my opinion, because what I kind of want to get at is I think the holidays and the new year intuitively make people feel more vulnerable, right? I've seen more family in the last 5 weeks than I have in the 5 months prior to that, right? Like, I love my family, but the holidays.
Hashtag tequila.
Yeah, right. As long as you have tequila at the family gatherings, it's going to be okay. But I think vulnerability innately comes with this time of year, and I think being vulnerable is one way to. I think leaning into it and kind of being in that arena is one way to gain something. We keep talking about focusing on the gains, not the losses this year. You can gain self-confidence. You can gain perspective. You can gain kind of a trajectory of what you want to accomplish. And I'll be completely honest. I know we keep talking about the new year. I am, for full disclosure, 100% against New Year's resolutions.
Okay,
like,
good.
I am completely against them because I think, and this is even what I tell people, and now I'm getting tangential. I'll come back in a second. But I tell people this with rehab. I'm like, there you go. Should I do this every day? Should I do that? Because I usually give between 4 and 6 things, whether they're stretches or corrective exercises. Every patient that I see throughout the day leaves with homework. And it's usually between 4 and 6 stretches or exercises. And all the time I'm like, how often should I do this? Every day, twice a day, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I was like, whoa. This isn't like drinking water. Like, this is going to be work. I would rather you do it 3 to 4 times a week and make this part of your life, and do, these exercises, and we're going to give you new exercises each week. Do this program for 6 months, 12 months, the rest of your life, then trying to dive head first, make a New Year's resolution that this is the year that I'm going to be perfect. This is the year that I'm going to lose weight. This is the year that I'm going to read a book a month. And you go a day, you go a week, you go a month, and all of a sudden you're burnt out. And you're right back to where you were, before the new year, where you weren't reading a book, you weren't doing your corrective exercise, you weren't doing recovery. So I tell people, like, make realistic goals, but don't lean too hard into the goals. And there was a cool quote. I have no idea where I read this or who I heard this from, but it was all about how to be more value oriented than more goal oriented. Because once you reach your goal, you're done, right? Like, oh, my hip feels better, right? I rehabbed out of that every day for a week. Well, chances are, and without diving too deep into the physiology of it, it's not better. You've just kind of masked some symptoms. We haven't actually fixed the root cause because, sorry, Rome wasn't built in a day. If you have 10 years of hip pain, you're not going to fix it in a week. I think that's the biggest thing I have to explain to people. But being vulnerable, leaning into that, being more value-oriented, not goal-oriented. And then honestly, this is kind of what I was getting at. I don't make New Year's resolutions anymore. Not making it a big deal. I mean, it's so funny how many people say, oh, I'm going to get a membership on January 1st at DSR so I can do the cold tub every day. Those are the ones that fail. It's the people that wake up one day and be like, yeah, I'm going to go try the cold tub today. Not non-committal, right? Maybe this is just me because I have commitment issues. I have no idea. But, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to try it. And, I'll see what happens. And then 9 times out of 10, there's a positive reaction. So they go again. And then there's another positive reaction. You get into this positive feedback loop, and kind of what you were talking about, workspace environment, life environment, like feedback loops and energy. It's so contagious. Like, having a positive feedback loop or having positive energy when you're in your workspace is going to make, I guarantee, is going to make everyone around you that much more positive. It's going to make your life better because all that shit is contagious. And so just not hyping it up, I guess, is what I've learned. Some of the best athletes I've ever worked with are the most like stoic people. And I think they come off as rude or, I don't want to sign an autograph. Oh, that guy's rude. He doesn't care. It's like, just, I think in the last 2 years, what the world has gone through with COVID and with, all the racial injustice that's been going on and just everything, right? From business to personal, everyone just relax. Yeah. We don't need a ton of resolutions. Just relax and it's going to be okay.
Yes. I know. I love that came out, 50 minutes in, that you hate resolutions, but perfectly serendipitous for this entire conversation, because more isn't more. And it's kind of like our initial part of our intro is adding in and like shifting the perspective on how we approach anything and not making it this stringent, we got to do it and struggle. And the idea of flow, and I continuously to work on this because I'm absolutely the masochist. The worse it tastes, the better it is for you. The harder it is, it breaks you, then it makes you stronger. Like letting go of that, my narrative is so hard and I'll probably have to do it forever. But getting towards that flow state and understanding that that is actually a thing. It's not just shit we read that Brene said that we know that it's like actually a thing. And I am big into like energy because like you just said, it all connects and it all flows. And some people can call it the woo, but really it's physics. I mean, like energy can't be created or destroyed. You can get very scientific with it. How you present yourself and boundaries have been very big. So when you say someone's stoic, of like, you don't always have to be the nicest and the most and whatever. I think to protect some of that energy is also a piece of it. Do you talk about like the energy or anything? Does that come up in these conversations or as well with the clients or personal or?
Yeah, I don't think not as much with clients. I think I'm in a unique position in the leadership role that I have here. I think it comes in conversation more with our team of employees at DSR. Not to say that it couldn't come up with clients, but I think the more the kind of the self-talk, self-care, recognizing that this isn't going to be an overnight fix. Most clients hate working with me because the first thing I say is, are you ready to commit, right? Are you ready to commit for the next 6 weeks, right? Like, not that I want you, again, going back, I kind of already explained how I don't want people doing their corrective exercises, every day of the week, but it's more of like, I'm just a catalyst, not even a catalyst. I'm just here, right? I'm just a vessel of information. You're the one, like my appointments are quick, right? Here's what's wrong with you. Here's how you fix it. Good luck. It's kind of what I do in a nutshell. And I'm like, I'm going to give you all the tools, but you're the one that has to do it. And I think that's, what you were kind of saying. You can read a million books from Brene Brown. You can read, you can watch a million things. You could know every TED Talk in the world. But until you internalize it and kind of pick and choose what works for you, I think the reason why there's so many self-help books and why there's so many self-help podcasts and quotes and cliches is that there's something for everyone. And I think knowing that it's not a one-size-fits-all type thing is super, super important to remember.
Very well said. And you really nailed it, because sometimes as we try and be intentional as coaches or leaders or what have you, I've really learned, and this is why I love working with ambassadors or influencers or leaders or mission-driven humans. Sometimes it's not always what we're saying as I sit here on my own podcast, but it's how we walk through the world, like our example of how we actually live and what we're actually doing, even embracing all the flaws and the messiness and the mistakes. I think the way we walk the world, there's so many more people watching, and our young kiddos are so much more observant and aware, and they understand. And obviously there's social media and we're quite literally watching more, but I really just to drive home that way you walk through the world. And I guarantee you as a leader at DSR, or even the way you walk through your life, I guarantee your actions of people, the way you eat, the way you walk in the room, all those things speak so much louder than what you say. And I would have to even disagree with you that their clients hate you. I get the joke in it, but I think the mission driven human. So what if I was walking and you're like, are you ready? I'd be like, oh, fucking A, this dude gets it. Like, I'm here, like speaking my language. Like, yeah, are you ready to commit? And then I'd probably be like, oh shit, what do we have to do? What do I have to cut out? And I'd go down that path. But
we could like dialogue what an appointment looks like, probably word for word. It would make everyone laugh, but it's fun. It's fun that I get to help people. It's fun that DSR is here. We're bringing what that pro athlete kind of recovery experience, sports medicine experience, we're bringing that to the everyday individual. And we're doing it in a manner that's multidisciplined, but that also is inviting. And I think that's one of the best compliments I've gotten. I've been here a little over a year, and every once in a while I get a feedback note, or someone on their way out says, nothing about this was intimidating, right? I walked in very intimidated with all the cool toys and the cryo. We have, I think, 11 offices in this building, and they leave, saying, hey, me and one of your employees are gonna, be on a fantasy football draft this year, or hey, I'll be in tomorrow. And when they come in, they're like, I love when a client comes back and is like excited to tell me not that they're feeling better, but that their, daughter went back to college, or that like their son got, won his football game. It's like, and then also, oh yeah, I feel better, by the way. It's like, that's probably my favorite part of the job.
I love it. At some point, you might be listening to a podcast of someone telling a story about you, of how you did something, or you had this teaching moment years from now. And they'll be like, Steve, he's probably not listening to this, but this happened. And I mean, you never know how like it kind of ripples. So if you're listening and you're out there, whether you're health and wellness, fitness, not, if you've got a change you want to make, an ache and pain you want to address, something mental going on, I really encourage you to check out recovery centers like Denver Sports Recovery or Energy, or anything that's maybe out of the box to address a goal, a problem, an issue in a new and different way, because there's so many trending new modalities that big food, big pharma, big sales, big marketing, all of it is probably just selling you. And I just think that one right step in the right direction and changing your perspective is huge. Steve, we could go on about so many things, but I really, before we wrap up, I really want to know, having all this great experience, exposed to all these amazing things, because I really do think when we address the mental and the physical, again, we start to see societal change, which is really what this is about, in a positive way. What are your goals for 2022? Or like, what would you personally like to see as a human, as a professional, as a leader?
Those are two different and very good questions. My goal, I'm about to be super vulnerable. I don't know if it's the tea that I'm drinking or what, but I am gonna start seeing I don't know what you would call him, a therapist, a counselor. Not because there's any issues, but because I think it's super healthy, and we do live in a high stress environment. So I think my personal goal, that's kind of already set up. So I wouldn't say that's a goal, but I'm gonna have my first appointment in kind of mid-January with a therapist, and my goal is to just continue to kind of improve my own mental health. And I want to see a lot in society happen, but I want to see people get off their phones. I think that's what I want to see. Again, I have a pretty unique perspective. You know, I'm at the table all the way. If you've ever been to DSR, it's a big room in the back that I work in. There's 5 tables, there's 5 chairs, and then there's a hot tub and a cold tub. So at any given point, if we're packed to capacity, I can pick my head up and see, you know, upwards of 5, 10, 15 to 19, 20 people. And I think we have music playing, we have TVs up on the wall, some people are talking, but more times than not, unfortunately, I look up and 90% of the people that I look up are all, you could be 2 feet from someone on either side of you, and all 3 people are on their phones. And normally we're either stressing because we're checking email, we're stressing because we're scrolling Instagram and comparing ourselves to other people, or we're waiting for someone to text us back, right? Like I'll admit it, right? Like I'm always waiting for not now, but I always fell into like, oh, I hope that girl texts me back, like whatever. And it's all stress inducing, right? How stress inducing would it be if we you put that down, turn to the side, and say, hey, how are you today, right? I think that comes off as creepy a lot in some environments in society, but I think the more we normalize it, the same way we normalize mental health, the same way we're normalizing conversations about racial injustice, we can normalize human interaction again. And I think COVID and the pandemic has challenged us in a way that has actually limited our human interaction, and I think has actually made us a little worse at it. And what better time to kind of go back and enhance that or improve upon it when it has been challenged in a negative way. I think human interaction has been challenged, in a negative way through the pandemic. And I think, you could, again, just using athletes as the example, it's great to get injured sometimes because you actually come back stronger, or you come back, maybe not even physically, but you come back mentally stronger because you know that you've conquered that injury or you've conquered that setback. So, fall down, get up. There's a million cliches I could probably say right now, but I think my goal is to improve my own mental health and keep my own cup or bucket full, and I want to see more human interaction in the world.
I'm going to take your words and say yes to all. The help you guys carry so much of our shit. I'm so glad to always hear any of like my varsity humans going to do for themselves, mental health coaches, physical therapies, any of it, because the leaders, the frontline workers, like the ones out there, and that really is you guys, you carry so much of it. So thank you for sharing that vulnerability. I've been working with, I've always done therapies, and most of it's because of my work. And then as I've gotten older, it's like, universe is actually dragging you through this because you probably wouldn't do it yourself. But anytime, just like continue to be a competitor. Like you always want to have a coach, a leader, a therapist guiding you in the journey. It's such a privilege to have that. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I hope that if you're a varsity human health and mental wellness and physical game, if they're seeking it, all of us should also be seeking that guidance. And if you have access to it, it truly is a privilege. And
it's something that you get to do, not you have to do.
Right. And I mean, it really is. I mean, it can be expensive and stuff, but any coaching, shout out to my coach I'm working now with, longtime, really great friend, Jessica Crow, and her business. We've doing a lot of business, but a lot of it's personal because it works together. And it's so phenomenal to have like a teammate in the game and keep my edges sharp and just stay in it. And I really got to second your conversation about getting off the phone, especially if you're in an environment where there's like-minded humans sitting right next to you. I've made so many lifelong friends at DSR that I still keep in touch with to this day. And even if we don't talk all the time, we're so similar in our mindset and our goals. It's just awesome. So man, I hope you can shake that up, because everybody in there that's not communicating and kind of like, just chatting, getting to know each other, it's such a major miss, because I've experienced that firsthand.
Yeah, no, yeah, you summed it all up great. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I love it. I love that you're out there kind of like guiding the ship. Steve, where do we find you? Hashtags, websites, anything you want to share?
Everything. DenverSportsRecovery.com is our website. We're on every social media handle, so Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Our Instagram is probably our most active, and that's just at Denver Sports Recovery. We're located in the so the Lower Highlands neighborhood of downtown Denver, right by like Little Man Ice Cream is right down the street, Zuni Brewery. We're on kind of Spear and 29. And we're open 7 days a week. Our, again, appointment-based services are on kind of one side, and then the recovery center is walk-in basis. So we're open 9 to 9 on weekdays, and then noon to 5 on weekends. So chances are, if you want to come in, we're probably open. We're open a lot. And then if you just come in and mention Turmeric and Tequila, if you're listening to this podcast, just mention that, and then we'll figure out. Our services are kind of all over the board, so we'll do some sort of discount. At the very least, I know, KO, you love the cryo. So if you come in and mention Turmeric and Tequila, you get a free cryo session.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Or a free day pass to the recovery center.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We didn't even discuss that. I didn't even ask you for that. So I appreciate you providing that. I think that's amazing. The cryo is the best. We appreciate you. Yeah. And if Denver, obviously it's Denver Sports Recovery. We're out here in Denver. Find a recovery center near you. And if you're traveling through, and Denver, obviously you have a huge hub, drop in for a day. I know travelers have come in before. I really encourage you, if you're traveling or you can have some extra time, go in and go see these guys. It's really, really worth it. And I bet if there's something in your city, they'll know where to kind of point you if you really enjoy it.
For sure. That's the cool part. We have 30 people that call this place home, or at least their work, not home, but who come from all walks of life, all over the state and all over the country. So we got some connections. Give us a shout, message us. I run the Instagram, so message us on there if you have any questions. And yeah, hope to see you in soon.
I love it. And I do want to make one final point. When you touched on equality and diversity and everything, that's obviously a major conversation in Turmeric and Tequila, because the pop culture is pushing so many like singular narratives. Long story short, I'm so here for life skills through sports. And when you are in a situation like sports or recovery centers, you are amongst people. It's such an equalizer that you probably never would have crossed paths with. You can have completely different income levels, sexual orientation, missions in life, like so many different things, but you kind of have this commonality of you're kind of there to become a better person. And it's such a beautiful equalizer. So get off your phone and get to know somebody that's so different than you, but probably like similar mindset and core values,
yes.
And a mission-driven human.
Yes. Love it. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, and Happy New Year.
Yes. Happy New Year, Steve. I appreciate you. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good.